All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Close your eyes for a second. When you picture conquering Mount Everest, what do you see? Probably a glorious solitary journey, right? You picture yourself as the ultimate human triumph, standing proudly at the summit, surrounded by piercing blue skies and the majestic silence of nature. Well, today, we're going to strip away those romanticized illusions. We're taking a hard look at the dark, heavily commercialized truth behind climbing the roof of the world. And we're going to focus specifically on the sheer terror waiting in the death zone and that staggering $50,000 price tag it costs just to step foot in it.
But here's the thing. The reality is a massive wake-up call. We all expect this solitary elite challenge. But look at what it's become today. Scaling the world's highest peak kind of resembles waiting in line at a crowded amusement park. Except, you aren't waiting for a roller coaster, you're standing single file at an altitude of 8,000 meters in a place where your body is literally dying by the minute. It is the absolute dark side of extreme mountaineering.
So, let's get into Section 1, the $50,000 commercial nightmare. To even step foot on the mountain today, you're looking at a massive financial barrier. A standard expedition will set you back anywhere from $50,000 to well over $100,000. I mean, 50 grand is just the baseline. And that huge chunk of change fundamentally alters who is actually up on that mountain. We're no longer just looking at seasoned alpinists who have trained their entire lives. Everest has become a commodity. It's an experience that can simply be purchased, assuming your pockets are deep enough. And here is the real danger of that immense price tag. To boost the local economy, the Nepalese government issues hundreds of these climbing permits every single year. Basically, if you have the cash, you get access. This extreme commercialization has led directly to a highly dangerous influx of inexperienced climbers. We're talking about individuals who might not possess the necessary survival skills, which means they end up relying entirely on their guides to carry their gear, set their ropes, and fundamentally just keep them alive in a place they probably shouldn't be. Which brings us to Section 2, Surviving the Death Zone. Once climbers hit 8,000 meters, that's about 26,000 feet, they step into a grimly named altitude known as the death zone. And guys, this environment is fundamentally hostile to human existence. You aren't just feeling a bit winded here. Your biology is actively failing. Human life literally cannot be sustained at this altitude for very long, no matter how physically fit you are or how much money you dropped to get there. Let's break down exactly what happens to a person in the death zone, because it is terrifying. First off, oxygen levels plummet to only about a third of what they are at sea level. Because you are so utterly deprived of oxygen, your cells actively begin to die. Your body is quite literally suffocating on a cellular level. As a direct result, your brain function drops to a mere fraction of its normal capacity. So you have climbers trying to navigate the most treacherous terrain on Earth while experiencing severe cognitive decline. It makes bad decisions incredibly likely and incredibly fatal. And this is where the massive crowds and the biological ticking clock of the death zone just collide into an absolute nightmare. Because there are only a few days of favorable weather each year, what climbers call the weather window. Hundreds of people rush for the summit at the exact same time. This creates massive, dangerous bottlenecks at extremely narrow ridges like the infamous Hillary Step. Just imagine it. Hundreds of people forced into a single-file traffic jam at the absolute worst possible altitude on the planet. It turns into a fatal waiting game. Climbers are forced to stand in line for hours in sub-zero temperatures, just burning through their precious, extremely limited supplemental oxygen. Exhaustion, severe frostbite, and altitude sickness take over so fast. This quote from our sources really hits the nail on the head. The horrifying reality is that many who perish don't slip and fall from cliffs. They just run out of oxygen while waiting in a queue. Their $50,000 ticket literally ends in a suffocating traffic jam.
Moving on to Section 3, the unsung Sherpa heroes.
We absolutely have to talk about the people who make this extreme tourism possible, often hidden right behind the summit selfies of wealthy tourists. I'm talking about the Sherpas. These indigenous Himalayan people are the true unsung backbone of every single expedition. Long before the paying clients even arrive at base camp, Sherpas are out there risking their lives. They navigate the incredibly treacherous Khumbu icefall, literally setting the stage so tourists have a path to follow. Without their incredible resilience and daily sacrifice, the modern commercialization of Everest simply wouldn't exist. As you can see, they bear the overwhelming brunt of the physical labor. They haul impossibly heavy loads of tents up the mountain. They transport the food and those vital, life-saving oxygen tanks right into the death zone. They're the ones securing miles upon miles of fixed ropes, the literal lifelines that inexperienced climbers just clip into to survive. Honestly, that $50,000 a tourist pays is largely relying on the superhuman behind-the-scenes effort of these Sherpa guides.
That takes us to Section 4, the world's highest garbage dump.
The environmental reality of what is left behind in these freezing temperatures is staggering. It turns the mountain into a haunting graveyard of both waste and human lives. The pristine slopes are now totally littered with discarded debris. We're talking shredded fluorescent tents, ripped apart by storms, and thousands upon thousands of empty green oxygen canisters dotting the ice. But most hauntingly, the extreme cold preserves the bodies of over 200 climbers who never made it down. Tragically, their brightly colored down suits now actually serve as macabre trail markers for future expeditions. It's a chilling reminder of the mountain's lethal reality.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, Ego versus the mountain. Despite all the well-documented dangers, the tragic deaths, and the grim reality of the death zone, the magnetic pull of the world's highest peak continues to draw people in. Local governments are finally starting to wake up to the crisis and are trying to implement stricter permit rules to manage the crowds. But the reality on the ground? The allure of Everest remains just as intoxicating and just as deadly as it ever was. People are still perfectly willing to pay that $50,000 to chase the summit. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder. Looking at the $50,000 price tags, the influx of inexperienced climbers, the deadly traffic jams in the death zone, and that haunting trail of debris and bodies left behind, we really have to ask ourselves, has the ultimate symbol of human endurance simply been reduced to an ego-driven tourist trap? Are we destroying the sheer majesty of the Himalayas just to say we stood on top of them? Thanks for joining me in this explainer. It's a heavy topic for sure, but understanding the reality behind those perfect summit photos is absolutely crucial. Take care and keep asking the hard questions.